Hello, everybody, and welcome to a little talk about the anxious animal. And my name is Susie Gazzi.
And my name is Viv Adcock, fellow Talk to the Animals facilitator with Susie.
Yay!
So what's our topic for today, Susie?
Yeah, it's about, anxious animals and fearful animals, and how can we assist them and what can we do for them and all that good stuff, And it came about because, of course, we just had the 4th of July weekend here in the United States, and a lot of animals freak out when there's fireworks or when there's loud booming noises or when there's thunderstorms. And so I know, Viv, that you have had a lot of experience with that too, because you've had to rescue quite a few greyhounds. Not had to, but you chose to rescue quite a few greyhounds off the track. And I know some of those also have been really quite shaken. So what are our number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tips that we can give people what to do with a fearful dog?
Yeah, I think one of the things that most people do when they see an anxious dog is they go in to comfort it and they go in to cuddle it and reassure it and stroke it, which might not be the best choice. So yeah, we've had a lot of dogs that have had reactions to loud noises, starting guns particularly. And so the dog that I have right now has obviously done a lot of racing, and I don't know whether they have a starting gun, but she would react, like full on react, run away, terrified, shake, hide under the closest anything, to get away from any kind of loud noise, whether it was a car backfiring or a door slamming, that would have kind of triggered this PTSD type reaction to her. So, to not go in and, like a mother would a baby, to not go in and mother that dog or try and comfort it or soothe it or talk it through is the first step, to not project our kind of human ways that we would be with an animal, because is that how an animal would behave in the wild?
No. No. I mean, the funny thing is too, some of that behavior that our dogs, or dogs in particular, we have them as pets, are different from wild animals. A wolf wouldn't necessarily react that way. And I hate actually comparing dogs to wolves anyway, but a lot of people do that, but in a way, like, that kind of behavior in the wild would be pretty much detrimental to an animal. If an animal would show that behavior, it runs away from the herd and runs away from the from the comfort of the herd, the protection of the herd. It might get eaten or it might get killed very quickly, versus a dog in our world here. Yes, it can run away, and yes, it might still get killed by a car driving by, but it's certainly a very different reaction that they have. So it is interesting how that is so different from a wild animal, but also, we have put them through stuff. So we definitely live with them in a different way than wild animals. Wild animals, we don't really project a lot on them. And I think one of the things we underestimate a lot is our projections. So anything we project at an animal, whether like you are fearful or, oh, poor dog, poor pitiful thing, oh my God, you're so bad, you're this and you're that, that I think is also something that really we underestimate. And we don't do that with wild animals because we don't know them personally. So we don't have that kind of thing going. But with our animals, when we do these projections, the animal perceives that energy. And so it's like we're communicating to the animal to be that even more, instead of really showing and giving them that energy of strength and the energy of protection that we can be for them, But if we, like you say, if we cuddle them, sorry, Charlie, sorry for the background talks, but if you cuddle them, you're buying into what's going on for them rather than actually showing them a different possibility. So now you're going down the same road with them, but what they really need is a rock in the stream, and you're just right now floating down the river with their anxiety, which doesn't really work.
And the whole thing too, Susie, it's like, what kind of leader, what kind of pack member do you want to be for your animals? Because everything's energy. And when the pack works and functions on an energy, whether it's a domestic animal or a wild animal, they have this energetic communication. They have this sensory connection, if you want to call it that, where they're aware of each other's energies. And if one of them is stressed or one of them is anxious, then that sends a message to the rest of the pack. So if you're willing to be the leader, and I always look at with these animals, I think what I do different, you've just given me a great awareness. What I do and be different with these animals is, my whole thing is, how do I empower these animals to be them? Not be what I want them to be. I don't want a dependent, clingy, insecure, following me around the house animal. I would like to see, I guess like I do with people, to see people that are empowered, whether they're leaders of their animals or leaders of their own life or their business, whatever it is, but that the animal has that space to work through any stress, any fear, any anxiety, anything that it's been exposed to throughout its life. Because these racing dogs are in a very high adrenalized, frenzied state a lot of the time. This is how they train them. They deliberately agitate that sense of adrenaline pump and the fight-flight mechanism, because they believe that that's the best, how to get the best out of the animal, and the racing, the racing part of it. So to allow the space for the animal to decompress from any trauma that it's been through, to not make it significant, to not put your own emotional content into it, is a journey. And my number one thing is, how do I empower? What can I be that will empower my animal to have that space of them again?
Yeah, that's awesome. And so there might be actually a few tools. Like, I know, for example, don't underestimate some of the things that are out there that you can get in a really high quality pet store. That might be, a flower essence or some essential oil or something that homeopathic that can actually support your animal in becoming calmer. There's also, in Access Consciousness, actually, we have an audio that is the abuse CD. It's called the original clearing of abuse. And we will put that later in the comments so you can find it with more ease if you are interested. But that CD is something you can play an animal like over and over and over and over to actually get all that adrenaline flowing out of their system much, much quicker. And one of the things I think that oftentimes people do is they think that, a dog with a lot of fear has a good time with being given a lot of freedom. But what I have seen is that a lot of times when you really want to empower them, it's easier to keep them more confined or keep them closer to you rather than having them like off the leash or run around the whole house and all that. They might actually do better in the beginning if they only have the context of a smaller space that they can really feel safe in. And I don't know, Viv, maybe can you say a little bit more about that? Because there's a lot of people too that have the point of view, oh, I shouldn't be crating my dog, for example. It's a bad thing. I'm locking them up, and all these kinds of points of views that we have that are sometimes really not valuable.
Yeah. And look, I'll put my hand up. Where's the camera? I have a confession. I have the same point of view, because my experience with animals in cages was at the pound, at the RSPCA, or, and I think about these greyhounds, they've spent their entire life in cages. And I have the point of view that this is bad and wrong and awful and terrible, which I actually, a few of the dogs challenged me on this, because the first couple of greyhounds that we had, it was a kind of an accident, if you guess, not that it was an accident, to discover what these dogs were actually showing me, because, having this space of wanting to empower them and facilitate them through the decompression phase from being stressed and anxious to being as relaxed as possible and enjoying their new life. We had a big space where we lived. We had a couple of acres. And so I thought, great, we'll let them out of the cage and let them run around the property. And a couple of the dogs absolutely freaked out. It was like they went into more shock. And I was in the question, I used some of the tools of access consciousness and talked to the animals and realized, actually, no, this particular dog who had been in a medical lab, he'd come off the racing track and gone into a medical lab. He was used to being in a confined space. And I'd left the boot open on the car one day, and we looked everywhere over these 2 acres, calling this dog. And in the end, I went, I'm going to get the car and go for a drive. And then I walked around, and there he was. He jumped into the back of the car in the boot and was totally nestled in and secure. And I'm like, oh my God, he needs that sense of space around him in order to feel safe. And so then I realized, well, being in the cage or being in, the medical lab or whatever, as much as I had my points of view about it, somewhere in his world, he felt more safe and secure with that more, the smaller space. So from that point forward, I always made sure that the dogs had either a crate that they could choose to walk into and out of in the house, or an area, a smaller room, often the laundry. If there was a storm, the dogs would go to the laundry because it was the smallest space in the house. And even though I felt confined in there was obviously a sense of relaxation and assuredness, or whatever that was, that the dogs felt from being in that space. So, and I think you've got a similar story with a client, was it, Susie?
Yeah, she had actually just gotten a dog also rehabilitated, or it was in the process, and she had a crate. She started with the crate, and then she decided, oh, the dog was doing so well, I'm going to let the dog out of the crate and basically give the dog more freedom in the house. And so she took the crate away, and the dog relapsed into some strange behaviors again. And so but she didn't even realize it when she was telling me that. So I said, well, how about putting the crate back? And she was like, what? She couldn't actually believe it, because to her it was almost like, no, we're going backwards. And to me it was like, no, just give the dog the crate. Like, why not? And put it in a place where you feel like you can actually leave it. You don't have to worry about it ever again. Like, in a sense, make that the dog's home if that's what the dog would like. And maybe in a year, the dog will no longer use it and it's fine. Or maybe sooner than that, but you don't have to worry about it. It's not like, oh, make sure your dog graduates away from the crate. It's all just points of views. Well, so anyway, let's actually just run a clearing here too. So everything you have decided, and everyone that is listening here, please. So everyone here, whatever you have decided about the anxiousness of your dog and what is right and what is wrong to do, will you now please revoke, recant, rescind, reclaim, renounce, denounce, destroy, and uncreate all of that? Right and wrong, good and bad, pod and pock, all nine, shorts, boys, povats, and beyonds. And this is the clearing statement from Access Consciousness. It asks the energy to go back to wherever this insanity was created, and it will undo it. And so this can help you to have more ease with things, because you're no longer stuck in a point of view. If you want to know more about that, please go to theclearingstatement.com. There's the best stuff there in terms of explanations. So
I've actually got a really good, just a quick story about the clearing statement as well, because when I first heard it, I'm like, what the heck? That doesn't make any sense. What, boys shorts? What are you talking about? Anyway, I heard this clearing statement a number of times, and I was driving past a paddock one day, and there was a horse in there, but its rug had gotten all torn and was all wrapped around its legs with the belts and the straps, and it was all around its neck, and it was terrified. And I could see it had been standing there for a while. There were a couple of piles of poop there. And I went, okay, this horse is either going to, stample me if I go in there and try and take, because he was stressed. He was sweating and very anxious. Anyway, I went in there, but before I climbed the fence, I just went, okay, I need to make sure I'm safe here. So what can I choose, or what can I be that will make sure I'm safe and I don't get hurt? Anyway, I heard in my head, run the clearing statement. I'm like, okay. So I literally ran the clearing statement 4, 5, 6 times, because I could feel this adrenaline running through my body. And after about the 6th or 7th time, it was like the steam was just dissipating, whatever that anxiety was that my body was perceiving, which wasn't mine, it was the horse's. dissipated, I went, okay, now if I come in and I take these straps off, will you stand still? Will you allow me just to take, and then you can be free, you know, you don't have to be separated from your herd, you can. And he's like, yep, I'm okay, just take your time. So I did, really slowly took all the buckles off and the straps and just let the rug fall to the floor, and he just took off at the rate of knots to meet his friend. But it was really dynamically palpable for me just to run that clearing statement. Crazy words, you know, I didn't really understand what it meant at the time, but I will never forget the impact that created, the shift in my own body, first and foremost, that I could be a calm space to approach this horse and be what needed to be to allow this horse to just reconnect with his herd. So yeah, weird and wacky stuff, and give it a try, folks. It may just work.
Exactly. And the other thing is too, you know, I made a little clearing loop, and it seems like for some people that has helped with anxiety. So we'll put the link to that also in the chat so you can find it. But you know, Viv and I both have some resources on our websites and things. So if you would like to find out more free stuff, you know, that is about tools that you can use, please check us out too. But what other thing can we basically gift you right now in terms of like another tip, another trick? I actually have to say, I have once worked with a dog that was really anxious, and what I did actually is I had the dog on a leash in the house, and I would basically leave the dog coming along with me all the time, and it was really interesting. I did that for about an hour, and the dog calmed down after maybe a half hour or so. It actually started to show signs of relaxation, which was also interesting. But I also did that from asking questions. And I think this is one of the things that are so important. Like, what if you didn't have a point of view or a conclusion about what's the right thing to do, but you actually ask the dog and ask the dog's body, hey, body, what do you require? What do you require to calm down, to let go of all this anxious behavior, let go of the adrenaline pump? And the funny thing is, even if you don't hear it, or you know, you think the dog should sit there and move its lips and tell your story, but you do actually get an energy, you know. So an energy will come up whenever you ask a question. There is an energy that will be the immediate response to that. And so just trust that and know that, because there may be things that you then see somewhere. You walk by a store and you see something and it's intriguing you, or you see a pamphlet somewhere, or someone tells you something and you're like, oh, that actually matches the energy that I was perceiving when I asked the question. So it could be your dog is asking for something like that. And so with this walking on a leash thing, I also got that just from like asking the dog, you know, in the dog's body. And it was like, all I got was like leash. Okay, cool, I'll leash you. And I tied the dog to my pants, you know, I tied it so I didn't have to hold the leash. And I mean, I didn't like, you know, jerk the dog around, but I really just walked around with the dog in the house, and the dog was following me for an hour, and it did something. So it was actually it was a really cool thing to see, you know, that it worked for that dog. So, you know, so Viv, I know you probably had some other things that you probably have some other ideas too, because you've been doing way more of those yourself than I have.
Well, you know, Susie, and thank you, because that's something that wouldn't even occur to me, you know, and I've worked with a lot of dogs and facilitated a lot of dogs. But the thing is, the key here, folks, is to not come to conclusion about what will work, what won't work, because I think we can get so stuck in, oh, but this trainer told me this, or that book said that. It's like, what do you know? If you are the guardian or the steward or the carer or the owner of the animal, I hate to tell you, but they own you. You know, what is it that you know? If you have this curiosity to really reach into their world and get to know them and have a bond and a relationship on a really different level, what is it that you know? What question can you ask of them? And just allow whatever it is, no matter how bizarre it might it might come back as, like you were saying, Susie, walking around around the house with the dog on a leash. Can you imagine somebody looking in the window?
Yeah. Whoop.
Yeah,
Loopy.
and I had a dog once similar. She kept breaking into the veggie patch where the compost bin was, and breaking into the compost bin and eating all the really rotten food. I'm like, what's going on with this dog? And it was after about 3 times of making the walls higher and locking it up more to try and stop her getting in. She was still getting in. And I went, what is it? What is it that she requires? And I was just driving to work one day and a light bulb went off in my head. It was like, oh my goodness, I wonder if she needs like, the stuff for you, what do you call it? The probiotics for her gut, the rotting stuff. And I'm like, maybe that's what it is. And so I did. I got some and tried it with her, and she stopped breaking into the compost bin. So be willing to kind of go beyond any conclusions, any assumptions that you've made, and allow whatever that communication is, however it shows up for you in the most random of ways, just allow that awareness to float in. Because the thing is, as soon as you ask a question, genuinely ask a question from curiosity, everything in the universe, including your animals, will do its best to deliver that information for you. All you've got to do is be willing to have it show up in a way that you may not think is normal, quote unquote.
Absolutely.
This is the art. This is the art of not having a conclusion and just being the question. Yeah. Awesome conversation.
Really, thank you. I the thing is too, like a lot of people have issues with certain aids, like leashes, collars. Like there is so much too about all the tools that we can use with animals that people have points of views about. Please don't come to a conclusion with that either, because a tool is only as bad as the person who is using it as an abusive tool, because any tool can be very helpful and it can also be abusive. So please don't conclude anything about any tool. Please, please, please. It doesn't matter what it is. Don't make it right or wrong. Just really ask, hey, is this tool helpful in my situation? Will this actually create greater? And will this work, for this particular animal? And also whatever you have maybe done with another animal may not work on this one, because this one is different. So that's another reason to just really truly stay in the question about these things and not come to these conclusions. But for example, for anxious dogs, there's also this tool out there that's called a Thunder Shirt, and it's something that came about from Tellington T-Touch, where what she discovered was that animals that have anxiety a lot of times actually have like the sense of something pressing against them, pressing against their torso. And so she came up with this pretty much this shirt that you can Velcro around them that gives them that sense of like, now I'm tugged in almost, it's like I'm tugged in. So just, and again, ask, is this a useful tool for my animal? And there may be many, many, many more things out there too. And if you discover any of them, ask, is this going to work for my animal? Is this a helpful tool? So, I guess for me, there's always more. And, and if you really also, if you would like to know more about perceiving the energies that come up in animal communication, we do have a program in Access Consciousness called Talk to the Animals. And we have facilitators that do these classes online and live pretty much in many, many places in the world. So if you want to know more about that, please go to talktotheanimals.com, and you might find some information there too about the upcoming classes and things like that. So, I think for me, I think I'm good. Anything else you want?
That was a great conversation. And thank you, Susie. I always learn something new from you every time. And we've had so many hours together and conversations and meetings and creations. It's like I always get something new out of our conversation. So thank you for the contribution you are to my world and to the world.
Well, thank you, Viv. Right back at you. I think we're just having fun when we're talking, so I love it.
talking about animals at the end of the day anyway.
Exactly, right?
Thank you, everybody,
Cool.
for joining us. And Susie and I will be having more of these. Stay tuned.
All right, thanks. Bye, everybody, and thanks for being here.